I live in Europe, and this means that whenever I want to buy something video game related, I have to sell one of my kidneys. For example, just looking at my local Facebook marketplace listings, there's this Game.boy Colors for 42 euros. It's not even properly photographed. It has been like flashbanged or something. I don't know what this is, honestly. What I usually do, especially with Nintendo consoles and games, is straight up importing them from Japan. I have already made a video about this, talking about how you can check if a Japanese game has English as an available language, so it actually lets you know if you can import that game or not. But I do this with a lot of stuff. For example, I recently bought this Famicom. It was around 40 euros and it was already pre-AV modded, because the Famicoms don't come with a AV out, they only have an antenna and you have to solder in the composite mod yourself. I think this was a great deal. Yes, it's a bit yellowed, but I could always retrobrite it if I wanted to restore it. I think it looks nice like that. Like, I don't really care about it being yellow. And the great thing is I am now able to play Nintendo's 8-bit games for cheap.
Why don't you get the PAL NES?
I'm not going to play them on a fucking PAL NES of 50 Hz. That's against nature. Alright, so I have this Famicom and I need games for it, because it's not like it does anything on its own, it's just a nice conversation piece right now. I bought some Famicom games to go along with this thing, and I got Super Mario Bros. For $2, Kirby's Adventure, Super Mario Bros. 3, Super Mario Bros. USA, which is just Super Mario Bros. 2, but they're trying to pass it off as something exclusive for America when it's just Doki Doki Panic. And while I made this eBay order, I decided to take a look at the other items they were selling in the store, and I found some interesting artifacts. The first one is this Evangelion Saturn game, which I may make a video about in the future. Not right now, it's in Japanese and it's a visual novel, so yeah, I don't really understand it. And finally, the star of this video, this Nintendo DSi. This console was $9 from the same store I got all the previous stuff from, and I have to say it was a bit of a gamble. You see, it was working and it was in pretty good condition, not perfect, but pretty okay in my opinion. It has a yellowed pen for some reason. How do you even yellow a pen? But it came with no battery and I had to get my own one. Those go for pretty cheap on eBay, AliExpress or Amazon. You can find them anywhere, really. So it wasn't really an issue, but the real issue was that this thing is completely in Japanese and you can't change the language and you can't even tell it to boot games in English. This thing is just Japanese. It is also region locked for DSi software, like the physical cartridges, to Japan only, which is weird because the DS Lite was actually region free, but yeah, Nintendo just decided to fuck this up for no reason. So yeah, I am stuck with this Japanese console, not speaking Japanese, and I live in Europe. And I know what you might be thinking, but listen to me, I have a way. The DSi was hacked and I figured out that just like every other hacked console, hackers would have found a way to change its language. You can take a Japanese Wii, undo the shit out of it and brainwash it until it speaks hamburgers to you, and I hope that you could do that with a DSi too. The challenge here was at least to run games in English. So how do you hack a DSi? I am not going to make a tutorial since console hacking is always evolving and making a tutorial would make it feel outdated in like 30 seconds. What I will do is link in the video description a website that it's going to be always updated with the latest DSi hacking method. You can come to this website in 1000 years and it's going to be always updated, so feel free to hibernate yourselves. In my case, the method involves copying some files to the SD card, then running a custom launcher called TwilightMenu, which looks just like a DSi menu but goth. Dumping the NAND, then installing a boot exploit. That's the only part that, if you are extremely unlucky, can break your DSi. Then you can use said exploit to either boot directly into TwilightMenu when you turn on the console, or you can install a custom firmware called HiyaCFW that lets you boot a emuNAND from your SD card, so that you never have to mess with your real internal memory. So yeah, now that you know how to do all of this at home, I will not assume any responsibility if your house catches fire. Let's actually talk about the experience. Yes, I managed to boot games in English. No, I didn't manage to change the OS language. It's still stuck in Japanese and I still need Google Translate to navigate it. Yes, better rental control. Thanks Google, that's useful. I've done some research and found some people that managed to translate the OS by replacing the emulant files with some English ones. But this solution doesn't really seem to be stable, it seems to be lackluster and full of bugs, so I decided not to use the original firmware and just use TwilightMenu. You can set your DSi to boot directly TwilightMenu when you turn it on using unlaunch, the exploit we previously installed, and you can set TwilightMenu to English, so this in the end just feels like an English DSi. It's great. TwilightMenu is, simply put, awesome. It is the reason to get a Japanese DSi. That and the DSi camera and DSi sound. How many gas do you have to buy before your bank begins to cry? Buy too much and you'll get sick. You are not that rich. TwilightMenu is a neat interface that includes different bundles of software which turn a DSi, which normally is basically a DS with a bad camera and a shitty WarioWare game. I love WarioWare, but this just doesn't work. Into a competent and useful handheld. And the S Bootstrap is included and it lets you run almost every DS and DSi game directly from your SD. R4, our friendship has ended. No, but seriously, this alone makes the DSi worth it. Just being able to paste ROMs into your SD and playing them is awesome. There are some games that still don't work and I will leave you the compatibility list in the description here, but for most of them it just works. Even DSiWare ROMs work. In this case, I have dumped my Zelda Force Words ROM from my childhood DSi XL, copied it here and it runs perfectly, which is just amazing since this game isn't even available to purchase right now. But now, let's tackle the main problem of the DSi. GBA. As you can see, the DSi slot 2 suffers of a severe case of not existing, but all the hardware from the DS is still here. And the DS hardware technically includes the GBA one, so I present to you GBARunner, which makes the DSi run GBA ROMs. Now, the compatibility here isn't perfect and is even more spotty than the DS one. To test this out, I have run Yoshi's Island side by side with my GBA SP, and as you can see, it runs perfectly, which shouldn't really surprise anyone, because as I said, the DS hardware contains the GBA one, so yeah, this isn't an emulator, it's just converting some instructions, but this is still pretty impressive, and it lets you run GBA games on the DSi, which was the main problem with this thing and why people kept buying DS Lites. This just works. Also, this means that DSi can technically run Doom, I guess. The GBA video ROMs aren't running here though, so 0 out of 10. I need to watch my failed parents here. What you can play though are actual MP4 files. I don't really see a use for this in the modern era when every one of us has a smartphone in their pockets with at least an HD screen, but this is still pretty cool and you can look like a weird person watching Eva on your DSi. It has some problems for me and I had to downgrade to a previous version to make this work, but I have other ways to watch Evangelion anyway. Let's now talk about something we all care. But Nintendo, if you're watching, look away, this is not for you, this might make you feel bad. Emulators! TwilightMenu has emulators for NES, SNES, Master System, Genesis, TurboGrafx, and Atari. Some of them, like the NES and Game Boy Color ones, work perfectly, while other ones, like the Master System one, either refuse to boot completely or they just work weird, like the SNES one, which was too fast. It's too fast. It's fucking Mario under Adderall. Mamma mia, I've taken the Adderall. But yeah, the main emulators that I would suggest everyone to try out are definitely the NES and Game Boy Color ones. These are great, and I even managed to play Pac-Man Championship Edition on a DSi, which is a NES game made last year for a game collection that was extracted from a Switch game and put here. It's weird, but it works. Speaking about non-emulator homebrew, I present to you Mario 64. This is actually Mario 64, not the DS one. It's the actual 1996 version, and this was made from the decompiled codebase project and is running a custom rendering engine, but this is Mario 64 that you play with your D-pad, just like it was meant to be played. Like, the DSi layout is similar to the SNES controller, and we all know how great that was for Counter-Strike. No, but seriously, this port is pretty cool, and the sheer fact that this is running on a Nintendo's machine really shows how much effort and care was put into this. It currently has no sound, but the full game is here, and it's running on a DSi. This is pretty awesome. You will find the GitHub link in the description and instructions on how to actually compile your ROM. if you're interested in trying this out. And yeah, I know some of you are going to ask me why I'm not using HiyaCFW. Well, it's pretty slow on big micro SDs, and I don't really have a reason to run it when I can run a English custom app like TwilightMenu. You can configure the SI to straight up boot to TwilightMenu as it were the official menu, and it's both faster and way more flexible. It has different themes and settings you can choose, and I feel like this is the better choice overall. What HiyaCFW gives you though is more DSiWare compatibility, and it lets you install games into a emuland, which might be interesting for you, just being able to play with your NAND without really having any consequences. In either case, by using launch, you can always boot directly to your real NAND by pressing A and B at launch and then selecting the launcher option. And that's useful to change settings or run the pre-install apps that are not available in the Twilight menu. So in conclusion, I think buying a DSi right now is a better choice than it was when it first came out. This was basically a DS Lite with no slot shoe, slightly bigger screen and a really crappy camera. But as it stands right now, this is pretty much a DS with a built-in flash card that lets you boot backups directly from its SD slot without needing a M3, R4 and 5 or whatever it is, and it lets you play GBA ROMs, which gives it some backwards compatibility that it never had before in the first place. You also have some quote-unquote Nintendo Virtual Console with the NES and Game Boy Color emulators, which in my opinion are the best ones in this package. And let's not forget that this is a Japanese DSi that's now perfectly usable in English, and this is a miracle by itself. It wasn't really worth it picking up a import DSi up until a few years ago, but now it's not only worth it, it's genuinely a great deal. This is now my main DS. I just drop ROMs on its SD card of games that I own and that I back up myself. It's legal here, Nintendo don't sue me. And this is awesome, I don't have to take a R4 card with me anymore, I just use this, and I also can play GBA games on it, and that makes this backwards compatible. Yes, with ROMs only, but this wasn't ever meant to happen, and it works surprisingly well for being something that was never meant to run here. So yeah, definitely get one of these before people start realizing they are a great deal, especially the Japanese ones that you can find on eBay at stupidly low prices. This was a great deal. I copied the McDonald's training game on it, so it might even find me a job. And closing with this awesome news on my job situation, good night!